Hi, everyone, and welcome to our intimate conversation with Susan Liu for 140 pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother. This is part of Vit Film Fest 2021. My name is Thuy Vo Dang. I am a board member with the Vietnamese American Arts and Letters Association, or VALA for short. And VALA is the organization that brings Vit Film Fest to you every year. Let's start by having Susan introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Liu. I live in Seattle, Washington, and I am a playwright, performer, and soon to be author.
That is so awesome. I have known Susan since I want to say 2018 or so,
Mhm.
when you first reached out to me. I work at UC Irvine in the archive, and I still remember this as one of my kind of favorite research reference transactions. I get this email from somebody who is doing research for her solo multimedia show. And so we get all kinds of researchers, but usually they're academic. So your inquiry was especially, for me, compelling because you shared the background story of doing this research to really locate an item in the archive from a magazine that your mom had viewed, right, as she was looking into cosmetic surgery. Tell me about how you came to find the the magazine ad and
Right,
look for it with UCI.
right. So, growing up in the Bay Area, every week we'd go to the nail salon supply store, the grocery store, and then there would be the Mobile, like the weekly penny ad. And so that was just all around the house. We would use it to like tear out and like Windex the table, like clean the table. Like we were always just using this paper. And I was like, I knew that she had found the ad there, right? So I had sent an email out like to the VSG list, the Vietnamese Studies Groups list, asking people, does anyone have copies within 1990 to 1996, right? Times that I think she would have seen it. Because up until this point, I had called the publisher and they were like, honey, you want something like decades ago? You're lucky if we have anything like a month ago because we publish so often. So who's gonna have this one edition you want? I said, okay. So they were a no-go. And then I contacted the VSG list, and that maybe a random guy might have this thing, and it was like totally, it's all bad and like terribly scanned. And they said, "Well, what about UCI?" And I said, "What about UCI?" And at this point, I'm just throwing everything against the wall, and I'm like, "I'm gonna marry this one." And then you say yes. And even better, you're like, I don't usually want it. You have to come in and do the work and find it, but I'll help you out. I'll throw you a bone. I was like, who is this woman? Thank you so much. And then you come back with a PDF, and it's exactly what I want. It's this ad of Dr. Leslie Moglen and like some terrible like airbrush Vietnamese women kind of looking sexual and stuff. And like all about his background to make him look like this good guy for the Vietnamese community, and you should trust him. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been searching for years. I blow it up. I turn it into a big poster. It's part of my installations. When people walk down my hallway into the theater, they can see that this is real. This happened in a moment in time. This influenced my mom, and you had the artifact that I can actually showcase it to everyone.
Yeah, I
Thank
love this story. I mean, I think your show, it's so rich, right? It tackles all of these complex issues of identity, of loss, of family relationships, of refugee trauma, right? Post-war trauma. And then, of course, you know, issues of the body and beauty standards, the labor of the women in our communities. You even deal with spirit channeling. And I know I'm missing so much more because it's so rich and nuanced. Um, but a lot of our viewers won't really know kind of the 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 processes you had to go through aside from the archival research, which is the way that we got connected. But maybe you can share more in terms of how you investigated this, what happened to your mother and how all of that led to the writing of this amazing show.
thank you. Okay, so just for anyone who doesn't know, my mom had died from plastic surgery malpractice when I was 11. And this happened in 1996 in San Francisco in the United States. And once she died, my family just didn't talk about her. and we didn't talk about her for 2 decades, and I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, and I would ask my father and my siblings, and everyone was just like, "You're so emotional, you're still living the past," and I'm sitting here going like, "I only have 6 memories of her, can you give me something? I want to know her." And after I got married and it was time to start thinking about having kids, I've been sitting here going like, "How do I become a mother if I don't know her? How do I just feel excited about this new identity I could have when really I'm totally frightened because the person who's supposed to guide me through this process is not alive, and not only she's not alive, everyone around me pretends like she never existed." And so for me in 2000, I think it was, this has been a long journey. Actually, it started in 2014.
Mm,
So 7 years ago, and I wanted to know what happened to her. I wanna understand, like, how does, like, a plastic surgeon essentially kill someone, walk away, never pay our family any money, and continue practicing? And he's on probation his whole life. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, I don't understand how this all makes sense and why this is allowed to happen. So I do a digging, I contact his family, I find out he's dead, I contact our old lawyer, they pull out all of our depositions out of this vault and they scan it for me. They could have thrown it away after 7 years. They had it 20 years later. I start reading depositions. I'm backtracking, understanding what happened with the doctor, what was his situation. He didn't have malpractice insurance because he was scammed many times because he had so many like mishaps. I'm sitting here going, like, why did my mom walk into this ticking time bomb? How did she have no idea what she was walking into? He had 20 lawsuits against him. Right? So I'm because my family's not talking. Now I go the legal route. I'm searching that way. And then as I'm like building this show, she starts coming to me. She makes appearances. Like she'll say things to me and I know I'm awake, but I can't open my eyes. I include that in the show. You know, I do reach out to the doctor's family. I get a voicemail back and it leads me and then I hit a dead end. And then I'm like, what is my mom trying to tell me? So I try to retrace her last day, going back to my childhood home, making the drive to the plastic surgery clinic, and then I find out that the hospital where she dies in a coma is 2 blocks away from the clinic. And I'm sitting here going like, what was everyone's motives? What are the living still feeling guilty with? Right?
mm,
And so part of this was the search for me to understand who she was so I could become a mother. And then part of it was the unraveling of what does trauma do to us? Why can we not speak? What is underneath that silence? What are we hiding and what are we protecting? Because for me,
mm,
I'm also trying to understand who my family is now in the here and now when they don't let me in. Right. And so this has all been like a very, I mean, it's like ethnographic research, it's legal research. And then also for me, it's like, I'm not a performer, but I need to tell this story and I need to tell it now. And so I'm also trying to workshop and understand how to become a performer too, and then lay it out there on the stage. So it was a very intense process. And officially with this show, it was about a year and a half where I was workshopping different, I call them episodes. And then eventually I had what you will be seeing at the Film Fest is the world premiere of 140 pounds. I did that in February 2019. And then I, took it on a 10 city national tour when I was pregnant after I decided I was going to become a mom. And I got to hang out with the Vala folks in OC.
yes, we were just reminiscing about how that was our last live event before the pandemic closed down a lot of our arts events this past year and a half. So I think for us to have you here at Film Fest 2021 as we're gearing back up and reaching our audiences again, it's so meaningful. It's so incredible. I want to kind of pivot back to talking a little bit more about your mom. I see her in your background. There is a bantha, right, an altar that
Right,
you've set up for her.
right.
Other way. Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go. um, her story, I think, she is first generation Vietnamese refugee, right? So much of our viewers, I think many of our viewers can probably recognize um, someone like her in their lives, right? A woman who has given so much to her family and built an incredible amount, and really often feel these are women who feel like they have stories that aren't really worth telling or sharing. I mean, it resonated so much with me because of all the women in my life. They some of them do work in the nail industry or the salon industry, but oftentimes they'll just kind of reference um, our, our male figureheads in the family as better spokespersons for our community's history. So I really loved this aspect of your show, which really centers the voices and memories and needs of female characters, female storytellers, memory bearers, or whatever we might want to call them. Um, can you tell us more about, I'm sure a lot of viewers are wanting to hear about how your family members have received this story. I'm sure you get asked this a lot, right, during Q&A, like, have they seen it? How do they feel? Just tell us more, give us the dish about these familial relationships as you bring this story to a very public space.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, technically we haven't actually really had a real conversation about mom still to this day. Um, so you can imagine the expressions on my siblings' faces when they come to the show and see that I'm imitating them and impersonating them uh, on stage because I do 15 characters. Um, okay, so I have 3 siblings. 2 of them, Wendy and Kang, have come to the show. They've come to the Seattle one and the San Francisco one, and then also I had the sequel called Over 140 Pounds, and they came to that, and they participate in the Q&As.
Hmm.
And actually, that's how I can actually hear about their experience with mom, which is a very interesting thing, right? Which is when so often in our generation we want to collect stories of our elders before they pass, and they're just like they're like, I don't know, or like, what is there to say, or whatever, and but somehow when there's like a third party attached to it, whether it's for a school assignment or it's like an official person interviewing them, it's a different type of permission, because now it's like it's not just us in our family dynamics, it's
Mhm.
someone kind of keeping it a little bit more safe. So what I'm trying to say is the 2 other siblings, they're supportive. They bring their friends, they participate, and I've been able to see their relationship with mom evolve. My brother tells me that he now has an altar. He used to reserve that for, like, that's what the older generation does, but now he actively practices. My sister and I will talk about dreams that we have about mom and what is she trying to tell us and how is that going to help our chocolate business, and what does she think about our kids. So we have been able to open up a conversation, and I like to say that in a way I've been able to resurrect mom. She's back.
Mm.
Now there's one sibling, Hang, my second oldest brother, who has never watched the show. And his wife has come, and he's more on the neutral side, where he's like, "You're gonna do that, and that's you." And I said, "Okay," but he doesn't participate or ask.
Mm.
And then there's my dad, and my dad has opted to not see the show, and uh, he I originally wanted to put Houston on the 10 city tour because there's a huge Vietnamese population there. And he said, "Well, Susan, if you would like to have a relationship with me, I'd rather people not know my business. So don't come to Houston." And I said, "Okay." So I took Houston off the list.
Mm.
He has told me, I think last year, he told me, he's like, "I chanted for your mom for 40 days." I said, "Okay, great." So I don't know if this show has allowed closure for my family, because really they were telling me, why don't you have closure? Like,
Mm.
over this, right? Mawadi, come on, it's old news. Like, you're so emotional. You're so stuck in the past. And I was just wondering, I was like, well, if I am, then why can't you tell me anything? And so there's this sensitivity about respecting people where they are, giving them space for what they need, and also not trying to force or change them. Which is hard for me, right? Because I'm so hungry and craving and wishing I could fill this hole of this mystery of who my mom was. And so I had to go figure it out in other ways. But as they saw I was so persistent, eventually they would give me like a tip or a one line
Mm.
or this. And I'd be like, "What? That happened?" And then I would write it into the show. So there's something also to be said about persistence too. Um, yeah, I mean, with my dad, he has clear rules, which is like, I don't want to talk about the past.
Mm.
And I was able to interview him one last time in 2018 about his boat experience, and but he could never talk about he could talk about being in Vietnam, the boat experience and escape, coming to America, but never my mom's death.
Mm.
Right there, like, it was just like I he just cannot. He just cannot. And I think for his generation, they have less resources and normalization around mental health, that it's kind of like me pushing him to keep talking about it, and he's, like, saying no, like, I have to respect his no, and also, like, once I open up that part of his past, it takes him time to come back, and be okay, and so the question is, like, am I doing more harm? And so there came a point where I had to stop, and then I think I finally reached a point where I have painted the portrait of my mom. I do see her, and I see her alive and well in all of us kids,
Mhm.
and that's been a really beautiful thing. Um,
Yeah.
but it took a while to get here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how you're describing your process as this kind of tension, right, between, in navigating that silence that so many in first generation, whether they've experienced this kind of loss of a loved one, or it is the loss of their homeland, the loss of so many kinds of other, unfulfilled possibilities, like life in, Vietnam. And there's that shroud of silence around it that so many in our generation have had to navigate. So for me, watching this, it's deeply emotional. Not because I can, understand exactly how you felt losing your mother, but because it was such a brilliant metaphor for that tension that we navigate in our everyday lives as children of refugees. Um, so thank you. I mean, thank you for bringing these conversations, as impossible as they feel, right? And as difficult and challenging as they must be for you to have. You're having them. You're pushing.
Yeah.
Um, and so I wonder if you can reflect, for us, we're seeing this as a taping of what is conceptualized as a live solo performance where you play all of these characters, right? You're both the writer and the producer, and you perform all of the roles. And I had the wonderful opportunity to see it in person. Um, our viewers today are seeing it as a taping. Can you maybe share about what some of these differences are in formats? Are viewers missing anything by not seeing it live, or are they getting something more in this virtual format?
Oh god. Um, Nothing can be live theater. All right. Let's put the gauntlet down. Like nothing can be live theater. Like I am standing like 10 feet away from you. And sometimes I could just hold that silence or that sadness, and then I look right at you. You know what I mean? And like the music and the lighting and how it hits, it's just like I never grew up with theater. We could not afford theater. I didn't know how great was theater was. I just thought theater was nutcracker. This like unaccessible thing that was about characters and money that would never have. And then as I got into the theater space, I was like, "Oh my god, it you can create such intimate spaces." And it will be different every night. It'll be different whether it's a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday, or who's in the audience. And some lines will play off like really funny or like really sad. And I'm like, why are you laughing at that part? And it's like that's the magic of theater, because I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know where I'm gonna make a mistake. I don't know when like the light's gonna like someone's gonna miss a cue, and then I'm gonna have to improv with it. And it's like we're all there about sharing this very intimate experience that will never be recreated again. Okay, live theater. Love live theater. Love it. Now, what are you gonna get at this show that you could not get in live theater? Well, this is recorded on 3 different cameras, so the angles are all different. So if you sat somewhere in the theater, you're only seeing one angle, right? So here you get to see 3 angles. It's kind of like when you watch football on TV instead of being in the stadium. Right? You can like really see different parts, and that's actually really enhanced. That's great. Um, the fact that it's recorded allows you to experience it if you're not at that city at that date and that time. You can still receive the work. I've done numerous virtual screenings during COVID, and people still get emotional. People still want to reflect. People give me their confessionals about what this meant for them. right? And as you said tweet earlier, you didn't have to lose your mom to be touched by this story. This
Mhm.
story is about loss, it's about forgiveness, it's about dysfunction, it's about mental health, it's about our disconnection with our bodies. So you're able to experience that. And I always say, whatever led you to watch this show, for you to get this ticket, like, not people don't want to be like, how do I want to spend a hot Friday night? Do I want to like watch the story about like this dead mother? Like, ugh. But you were led here for a specific reason, and now you can access it. And you are going to get the meaning and the purpose that you're supposed to get. And I find that awesome and exhilarating. And actually, this is the first time with Viet Film Fest where it's streamable on demand for a period of a week. So now because virtually you still had to like come at a date and time, and then I would like manage the conversation and all that. But now it doesn't matter what time zone you are in, you can access it. So I'm super excited about this because I've already gotten some international audiences, and now we can really reach them if they want to.
Yes, and I have to say the accessibility factor is one that got me really excited and thinking about how this can now be seen, like you said, everywhere, right? Beyond the US. Um, there are some themes though that really kind of resonate, right, with the Vietnamese American experience. As I was watching the show again, and each time I've seen it live, virtual, I've just cried buckets and buckets of tears. So for those who are viewing this panel before the show, or I hope you're bringing your tissue box. Um, I think that element, you were talking about how theater was so inaccessible, right? It was so kind of what the rich folks did,
Yeah.
and had access to. And I grew up exactly that same way. I didn't, I don't think I even went to the movie theater, which was much more pedestrian than like theater.
Or like if you
Uh,
did make it to movie theater, you'd kind of like sneak into other theaters and like watch more
yes,
shows because it was like so expensive, right?
yes. So, how did you go from that kind of background where theater was so inaccessible to now you doing live theater, right? You being a performer, you being someone who writes for theater.
I never intended to do this, you know? Like, I just thought, okay, I'm gonna become a mom. I just need to get it out of my system. I've had this calling to be on stage. I had started stand-up comedy in 2011. It was going really well for 2 years, and then I kind of essentially got booed, heckled, and it was a disaster, and I was traumatized. I was totally traumatized. Totally traumatized. And I said, "Wow, that was a dumb hobby. Okay, I'm gonna move on with my life." But when yeah, I did. But when that moment came of like, "When are you guys gonna have kids?" It's like the aunties and the dad, and it's like, "You're not getting any younger. Come on, come on, come on." And I'm like, "Oh my God, like, let me make my own choices with my ovaries." Like I said, "Okay, Susan, if you want to prove to your child you're not a coward, you are gonna follow that calling and you're gonna be on stage and you're just gonna just do it." And I said, "Yeah." And I gave myself 2 years, a 2-year window. This is when after I got my MBA and I'm a management consultant, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do this on the side, get out of my system, and then boom, the IUD is gonna come out. Yeah, this is what's gonna happen. And I did this solo performance class, and for me, I had loved Jim Carrey's movie Man on the Moon about Andy Kaufman. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do something super like weird, and it's gonna be awesome, and like I'm the Asian version of it. And it's like, and then I'll be done. And I go to the solo performance class, and on the first day of class, they said, "Tell a 5-minute story." And I said, "Okay." And the first line that came out of my mouth was, "I wanted to avenge my mother's death." And I started talking about how I tracked down the doctor, and then I found out he was dead and what that meant for me, and everyone was like, "Damn." And I'm like, "Okay, I mean, I didn't mean to share it." Like it's such a dirty laundry that why would you ever share this publicly? I didn't this was not my thing, like, it wasn't like, I that's what I'm going to do, and I'm gonna hold my hat on it. It was always just like, I'm gonna do something really weird on stage, and then I'm just gonna say I did it, and then I will go on with my merry life. And then after the first episode, doing 25 minutes on stage, I was, like, so angry. It was all about avenging my mother's death. It was the anger part, and I was like, "Wow, like, I thought I was over this. I thought my years of therapy worked, but really I was using the shows to go through the grief cycle
Mm,
live on stage. And I was like, "Oh my god, like I need more." Cuz all the audience members were like, a lot of them my friends, okay. Were like, "Hey, that was a really sad story, but actually I don't know who your mom was. You know, you're
mm,
grieving your mother's death, but I don't see her. I don't know who she is on stage." And my answer to that was, "I don't either." So I kept researching and I would go back to Vietnam, go hang out with my aunts, keep pushing them to tell me stories. And everyone was holding on to something. And I didn't know what it was. But until I would find these little juicy tidbits that I could ask different types of questions, then it would slowly unlock other things so I can ask other questions. And it was just like this delicate dance. Like Vietnamese is a very indirect language. It's very poetic, it's very playful, but it's also very indirect. And for me, I think my American brain was just like, "No, but tell me the story." And then they would say things like, yeah, it was indirect, and it took me time to realize, wow, Susan, like people are still grieving. What are they protecting? They're protecting themselves. Huh. Because up until this point, I thought they were withholding stuff to me, but I realized no, they're actually really protecting something of theirs. So I've gotten to know my family in a very different way. And um after workshopping it for a year, I was like, wow, it's getting some traction. I'm getting some local press. And then what does the universe do? Fires me from my job. And I'm sitting here going like, okay, I guess as an MBA, you're always trying to maximize income and like you should like try to like get the job you're most qualified for to get the most amount of money, right? Because like up until that point, I didn't make a lot of money. I'd done a lot of different things and I had never really had a like save for my retirement fund, let alone like being able to start giving my dad money on a monthly basis was really big for me, and I could only do that once I was working in the private sector.
mm,
So then, like, when I
and that guilt is real for a
it's
lot of us,
real.
right?
You wanna be a good
Mhm,
daughter?
mhm,
And so I was at a fork in the road where I was like, "Go back to corporate America." I mean, I don't really love it, and, like, you can tell on my face I don't love it, which is terrible. I can never play poker. And then the other part was like, "What what am I supposed to uncover? What else is there more?" Um, if I were to do the show the best way possible, the biggest way possible, what would that look like? And so I gave myself a time box of another year. I had financial metrics. I was like, "How much money do I
on
wanna
your
make?"
spreadsheets.
Well, I mean, I got I had business school loans, you know, cell phone, but also like we had just got a house. We were going into this nesting adulting phase, and I was sitting there going like, "Oh my god!" Like I thought apartment rent was high, and like now it's like it's handcuffed me in a new way, but then it also forced me to work in a really different way. Like that's why I did the tour. Like that's why I was pushing for community partnerships. I was like, everyone, like if I throw everything against this wall, what can happen? But I had a fire under my ass because it was not a hobby anymore. Like I needed to make money.
Yeah,
Which goes back to the refugee hustle, right? Like my parents had a nail salon and it's like, how do you learn how to do a nail salon? You become a teller and then you save your money and then you just open it. Like no one's taking any courses, like you just do it. And
yeah.
so, one of your questions was like, wait a minute, you got an MBA, why didn't you get an MFA? And it was like, girl, when I came back from Vietnam after college, my dad was like, "Master, master, where's your master?" And it's like, you're not supposed to date until you get your master's." And I was like, "Oh my God, like I've broken this rule so many times." And like the only thing I thought I could do at that time was to get an MBA because my sister and I had this chocolate company. And I'm like, okay, great. Like that translates sort of to getting an MBA. But at that point in time, I was not thinking, "I'm gonna get a master's. I'm gonna get an MFA." I never saw myself as an artist. I never
Yeah,
saw that I could be telling these stories because guess what? There were no Asian people telling stories, and also, like, it was never validated, right? When I was doing stand-up comedy, it was mostly men, white and black,
yeah.
men, doing very derogatory stuff towards women or talking about it, and I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna go on stage and say my period smells like fish sauce," and then they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So there, because it was just like, who else what else do we have?
Yeah.
to share about our stories. They were like, what I, when I started all this, I was not thinking like, hey Twee, like thinking about the Asian American canon, like we need more representation and I'd like to like center our stories. Like that was not me. I wish
Yeah.
I was that thoughtful about it. It was more like I need to tell the story. I need to get it out of me because if I don't, I cannot move to the next step. I cannot level up as mom. Like there
Hmm.
was this anvil on my shoulders of like I have to do it. There's no choice to do it. It's not I don't even want to do it. And then I did it. And then it opened up for me where I was like, "Oh my god, I am talking about all these amazing themes." Like, yes, we need to talk about these things, but I could not see it. I just wanted to know who my mom was.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, I wanna go back to that generative space that you were in, but first, okay, chocolate.
Oh yeah, we
You
got it.
dropped that you and your sister, had a chocolate company. Say more.
Still do, yeah. Oh, so it's called Socola Chocolatier. So chocolatier. And when and actually this year's the 20th anniversary. We started it when we were teenagers. We used to sell in front of my dad's nail salon during the farmers
Oh,
market.
amazing.
I know. I was like, screw lemonade. We're doing chocolate. And my sister's so talented. She's so into working with her hands and into food and chocolate. Because our nail salon was across the street from C's Candies. And everyone
Oh, you brought the competition.
well, I mean, you love free samples and you want to know like how do you make these things, but then also it's like what? It's like too sweet, and I was like, how do we make something we're excited about? And how do we make money so we can actually, and I'll kid you not, after every market, we would separate the money so we could pay for more ingredients and more molds and more boxes, like more things to keep growing our small business. And then we also had movie money and we would go to the movie theaters because we didn't have any money.
That is amazing. I love that story, how it also goes back full circle to what we're doing, what we're trying to do here at Film Test.
Right.
Um,
So
hustle.
to fast forward it all, it was a hobby for a number of years. Then after college, I went to Vietnam. I did internship with USAID with on sustainable cacao development and worked with cacao farmers. My sister came and visited, and then she was just like, I want this to be more than a hobby. And I said, you sure? She goes, yeah. And I moved back. I spend the next 3 years trying to grow the business, throw everything against the wall. Like, do we belong in Whole Foods? Like which farmers markets? Like, where do we belong? What's our flavor profile? How do you improve our website? And it's just like so crazy because like at that time I couldn't even afford our chocolate, because it was like high end stuff. And I was just like, it was like just a recent college grad. Like I can buy high end stuff. And so I'm trying to think about what do these customers think about? Like, how can we grow this business? And I'm throwing everything against the wall. After 3 years, my sister stops moonlighting at her management consulting job. We actually switch places. She runs it full time. I go to business school and then become a management consultant, which is hilarious. And then she's been growing it since then. There's a storefront in San Francisco. We just had for Tachungtu, we had chocolate mooncakes. She came out with this one chocolate with a mango pate fouille with fish sauce and cracked black pepper in it. Chrysanthemum tea. We do a durian one, a jasmine tea one. Like it's now we are making things that we want, that our aunts want, and turns out a lot of other consumers want because now we're not ashamed of being AAPI. We're like so
Yeah.
fucking proud of it. And now people are supporting producers and content makers because they don't have to just look at essentially white influence on white media and say like that's what I'm going to consume to be good or to show that I'm enough or that I've made it. Like no, actually we are making it as a new generation and let's support each other. And I've been seeing the last few years Sokola has been growing by leaps and bounds because we are consciously supporting community projects when we can. When terrible things happen in your community, we step in with what we can. And also, we're making things that we're excited about that reflect who we are. We do not have to make European flavors that go in line with the old guard. We can be
Yeah.
like, and now I think that guava pate de fouille would really fly. Let's just try it out. What would pickle kumquat look like on this? And it's check it out. We've been working on it. And we also
That's
just have a storefront in San Francisco.
and all of these things, I think, like from the chocolate to the stand-up comedy and then the writing your script and
Mommy?
um it's definitely a trajectory that is not normal, right? Not really average for a Vietnamese American. So maybe you can say more about what you're doing next. Share with our viewers what's cooking.
Yeah. Well, I just want to go back to that phrase of like what's not normal. I mean, it's like when we think about refugees, everything about that was not normal. About escaping and remaking your life here, it was so not normal. And you just had to just try and figure it out. But at the same time, there are class divisions within Vietnamese people that not everyone fared the same way, and that incarceration rates and education rates are different. So I want to also acknowledge that, right? But I do want to say that what our parents did, what some slightly older, like in your generation, also came over, it's just like that was all not normal. And everyone had to reinvent and throw stuff against the wall. So I feel like, in a way, what I'm doing is not new. What I'm doing is actually the path of what my mom did. Right? What am I doing right now is I went on tour. A book agent was sitting in the crowd at the New York premiere, contacted me, asked me if I wanted representation. All of 2020, while I was giving birth to my son during COVID, I wrote a book proposal. I got a book deal with Macmillan, and my memoir is going to be coming out in 2023, and this is the first draft.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Congratulations. Can you read the title of that memoir?
I mean, working draft is The Manicurist's Daughter.
That's amazing. Congratulations. I
Yes.
cannot wait to read that.
Now I'm learning how to become an author. Which I'm always kind of like, why do I do this to myself? Like, this is so stressful. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm sitting here going like, maybe that's what I do. Is actually this I'm not gonna say I thrive in uncertainty, because I am on the floor crying, going like, what am I doing? There's days when I can't finish reading it and annotating it and being like, I've hit a wall. And then there are times when I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna look up what people who I admire, what they do. They do residency. I'm gonna go apply to them. And I got one. And it was called Hedgebrook. And it's one of the most premier, world-renowned residencies for women in the world.
Is
40
it the one that's on an island?
Yeah, I got
Oh
it.
my God,
And that's where I finished the manuscript.
that's amazing.
Because I was like, how do you do this with like a kid? How do you do this with home life? And like, also, it's like a very vulnerable story that there are memories I don't want to remember. I just don't. And it's been hard. And sometimes I hit the wall, but I was like, I have to do this. I have to do this because when I saw, like, after the show, people would come up to me and say what the show meant to them. That was amazing. Like, I never expected that this was about a journey to also help others heal their pain. And I'm so glad it is. Like, it gives me even bigger purpose of why I do this. And I think with the book, you can go deeper in different ways in
Hmm.
terms of really understanding my family and being able to I can world build in really different ways. There's so many stories that are not included in the show, that you get to read in the book. And I just there's so many stories that we have in our community that need to be shared.
Yeah.
And this is another way I can do it. And maybe that's why I got the MBA, right? Like, the show as a recorded commodity now is scalable. This book will be scalable. And it's coming out in 2023.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And I think this is a really wonderful way to end, is to remind, viewers of how this journey that started for you, really being about trying to get answers for yourself, right? As you go through these phases in your life, it has now become this beautiful resonant space for others to join, and ask questions and work through their own struggles with loss and with longing. So I want to just say thank you so much. I know that the show has changed me as well, and I hope that those viewers who are here in the panel with us, who've seen it already, can take some of the background information that you've shared with us today and really go back and watch the show again if you have access for a whole week. So thank you so much, Susan, for joining us at this year's Vit Film Fest. It has been a really exciting year for us to come back to our audiences again. And we've had amazing staff working round the clock to bring this festival to our audience. So your being here means everything.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
listening.